Buffalo After Dark is proud to recommend I Barbecue for You. Pre-orders are suggested by calling 716-880-7667. I Barbecue for You, Buffalo's new barbecue destination.
Just move the coyotes. Don't do another expansion.
Right? It would never cross my mind. So somebody called the house when I was out mowing the grass.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
Holy shit, your face is like purple.
Are you still up? Now in your fifth season, it's Buffalo After Dark.
Welcome to Buffalo After Dark, everybody. It is Wednesday night, January 29th, after the absolute shit show we saw this past Sunday. But we're going to be here to break it down, and of course, we're here to vent, and you'll be able to comment in the live stream as well. We are live on Facebook, and of course, we're on YouTube as well. But Anson, I know we got a lot of stuff we want to talk about. I know there's a lot of things you want to vent about, a lot of things I want to vent about. But how was your week?
It was good overall. I mean, I'm going on vacation on Friday, and so this is actually my last show for at least a week. I'm going to Orlando, Florida on Friday, but then leading up to that, I'm going to the U.S. Virgin Islands, like St. Thomas and the Great Stirrup Cay and the Bahamas, things like that, for 7 days. So you guys will not see me next week, and Tom has already made arrangements for my replacement for this week. So, be sure to stay tuned for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of people know who may be coming on. And, of course, it's not exactly a surprise, but have been in talking to Vinny Tarcasio, and we may have him come back. He was originally with us on season 1, so he may be coming back to fill in for the night. So it'll be good. So we're looking forward to it. But other than that, of course, you guys know the deal. If you want to comment, we do have the YouTube up and running, and of course, we'll be here for the next little while. So of course, feel free to throw in whatever you want to throw in. But this game, where do I begin? Where do we begin?
Do we have to?
All I'm gonna say is the NFL's fucking rigged.
Oh my god!
I'm just gonna put it that way. This game. All I can say, that 4th and 1 should have never been a 4th and 1. 2 bad spots. Even the NFL ex-head of officiating, Dean Blundell, was saying it was a first down. Romo, who freaking sucks off the Chiefs like no tomorrow, even thought it was a bad spot and a first down. Every single other person that's not a Chiefs fan thinks it was a first down. Then, of course, you have Xavier Worthy being a little bitch and basically saying, oh, well, the Bills screwed me over by not drafting, but yet 31 other teams didn't even give a crap except for the Chiefs. And, of course, the Bills ended up having to trade down, so they had extra picks. And then, let's see, the Travis Kelce non-taunting call that really should have been a taunting penalty, but of course it wasn't. There's a lot of different ways we could go. And then, of course, the catch that it could have been. And we end up having a repeat of what Mark Andrews did to Baltimore in the game the week before. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be addressed with this team. But all I can say is this. Number one, the NFL can't find us, so refs, you fucking suck. That's number one. And you don't have access to our bank accounts, NFL, so yeah, this is if you try, because I will go after you. But otherwise, let's see what else. Most of America thinks the same way, unless you're a Chiefs fan. But then on top of it, I mean, there are things the Bills could have done differently. We got off to a slow start. That didn't help us. Our safeties were absolutely torched. Bishop, I don't know what the hell his problem was all night, but he just got burned day in and day out. And then on top of it, I mean, Hamlin didn't have the best game. Our tight ends didn't have the best game. I mean, there are things that the Bills could have done differently, and we didn't. And here's one of the other things I look at. We had virtually no run game in the first half, and we finally went to it in the second half, which Kansas City couldn't stop the run very effectively. So, I mean, I do think we should have planned for that a little bit earlier. I could definitely tell that Allen was trying to do a little bit of remnants of hero ball very early in the game, but then he finally settled in. So at least he got comfortable and started doing some good things. But I gotta say, defense torched us again. We need huge upgrades at safety. That's the first thing. We need to bulk up the defense again. The good thing is we're gonna have some cap money. We can do it finally. And all I want to say is, Kyrie Elam, I don't want to fucking see you back on this team this coming season.
Well, I mean, I had to listen for 5 minutes, and I think starting at the top, yes, let's go back to that Bills game for a little bit because we were all over the fucking place. First off, I just want to comment about the game and say, yes, that should have been a first down. Anybody with their brains that watch football knows that that was definitely a first down. Everyone knew that Allen got that first down. But then, of course, people said that he wasn't, and, oh, you couldn't see the ball and shit like that. But then the next thing you know, they say, all right, that's turnover on downs, Kansas City ball. That penalty, or not that penalty, that moment killed the momentum the Buffalo Bills had going for them. Because if you look down the clock, the Bills were winning.
Yeah.
They were winning at that time.
Yeah, and statistically, the game was very even. It was very even. Like, even at the end, it was only maybe like a 5 to 10 yard difference if you're looking at total offense. It wasn't much.
No. And second, regarding the Xavier Worthy catch, first off, Xavier Worthy, if you go back on that tape, that was 3rd and 15 with what 9.5 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. Yeah, if you look back on that play, it was 3rd and 15. If this was any other team in the National Football League, mind you, if this was like Jacksonville, they would say that's an incomplete pass, but not Kansas City, not the Kansas City Chiefs, people. As far as that goes, the NFL will not allow the Bills to win as long as their moneymaker is in the fucking Super Bowl. So, with Xavier Worthy in mind, that dude has speed, but he can't catch for shit.
Right.
And it was outright proven on Sunday.
Exactly. And the thing is, you have to maintain possession of the ball even when you go to the ground. There was no possession maintained on the ball.
Yeah, and if you look at the replay, you could see the ball was clearly hitting the ground.
Right.
So how was that ruled a complete pass?
Yeah.
That's what I don't understand.
Yeah. Every single other football game is incomplete.
Yeah, and again, if this was like Jacksonville versus like, I don't know, Indianapolis, if that play happened, they would immediately call that incomplete pass.
Exactly.
That is fucking bullshit, if anything. But I also want to mention about that last play of the game for the Bills. The Bills were being pressured. O'Cyrus Torrence had no idea what was happening. That offensive line left Allen in a terrible fucking situation. They were guessing, which is what you're not supposed to be doing. They were guessing. So if you look back on that replay, Allen was capable of throwing the ball into the air, which he normally does.
Right.
He's good at it. Dalton Kincaid was wide open. But the biggest thing that happened, and I don't think you mentioned it, was the mystery flag. It one way or the other.
Yeah.
If Kincaid caught that pass, beep, unsportsmanlike touchdown number 86 or some shit like that.
Right.
Because the NFL wants Kansas City Chiefs for some fucking reason. I don't understand why, but there is a purpose to everything. But even if, though, Kincaid dropped that pass, that flag came out. And that sparked a lot of people. And they said, what the hell is going on here? Why is there a phantom flag on the last play of the game for the Bills?
Right.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
And on top of all that, there were also holding penalties on Kansas City.
Yeah, face mask, that wasn't called.
Yeah, face mask was never called. Unsportsmanlike conduct was never called. Taunting from Travis Kelce was never called. So when Kansas City does it, it's fine. But when Jordan Phillips stands up for his teammates, that's a penalty.
Yeah. It's like the NFL has such a fucking double standard. It's not even funny. And then going back to your point, what was the phantom flag? It's like even the commentators on TV were saying, we were told there's a flag. Where's the flag?
There is no flag. The NFL rigged that play. They rigged it on purpose so Kansas City could be the, quote, first three-peat in the history of the National Football League. And you know what's going to be the nice thing about all this, Tom? Is when history, as you know, is not very kind to those who commit greed. And if you know anything about the 7 deadly sins, 3 of them were committed by the NFL. Envy, greed, and pride. the NFL has too much pride in their production with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, who they act as the second coming of Tom Brady. Which, to be honest with you, if there's that many penalties being called in their favor, but kills off the vibe of the other teams, take Houston, for example. Houston got screwed over. And again, the Texans were winning at one point, and the league said, nope, we have to make Kansas City win.
Yeah.
They were too fucking greedy. And there's a little thing, too, and I think the NFL sort of forgot about it. It's called parity. So you need parity in the National Football League to make things a little bit more interesting. Not the same team every year in the Super Bowl. It's not going to stand. And greed is a big part of this. Greed with Taylor Swift, big influence to Chiefs fans or bandwagon fans, as you want to call it. Because a lot of the bandwagon Chiefs fans give no shits about football. They just care about Taylor Swift. And that's a fact. And if you look at the money that's being followed, Taylor Swift, I think not this year, the year before against the 49ers, the second time, she brought in $285 million for the National Football League to consume.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts. And then ML Football actually had this out earlier, and I sent you this in our Buffalo After Dark chat. But how about the line judge, Patrick Holt? And he was the one that made that call of Josh Allen being short on fourth down. How about his social media post being home of the black and purple nation, referring to the Baltimore Ravens? He is a Ravens fan. But then he also mentioned family comes first, and he is in Kansas City because his family's from Kansas City. So guess what? They're Chiefs fans.
This is some serious shit that needs to be deeply looked into. That somebody has to call out the NFLPA and have them investigate, is there inside trading going on in the National Football League? And this is a deep concern, because why should the National Football League have referees who are supposed to be unbiased play fairly? Because what's the point of watching it if you know the outcome of the game? Like this year, we know the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl and have a three-peat, because we know that Roger Goodell will not let it happen. He will not fail that three-peat unless, for some reason, knock on wood, Patrick Mahomes has a concussion or he gets hit in the head and is forced to sit out.
Right. Or Saquon Barkley goes off for over 200 yards and basically runs it down their throat, which I pray to God that happens.
Well, okay, I know people don't like Philly, and I am one of those people. I don't hate the Eagles.
Yeah.
I hate their fans. And
Right.
I think that's
But
fair to say.
I respect the team, though. They
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
very good team.
Yeah, I mean,
And-
they are cocky, but Eagles, like the team itself, they're good on paper, but it's not to say that there was some rigging going on in the Washington game as well against Philly this Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Even though it was a blowout.
There were
that
some
doesn't
bad
mean
calls.
shit. Oh, yeah, there were horrible calls. One comment that stood out in the fourth quarter was that little thing that went on with Frankie Louvu, where he hopped over the defensive line or the line of scrimmage like 3 times. And
Oh,
the
yeah, the
referee-
encroachment penalties, and then basically the refs are going to be like, oh, we're going to give you the score anyways.
Yeah, so it's like, how much farther could they go?
Right. What was it, like second and like half an inch?
Who knows? But if my memory serves me correctly, I believe it was right at the goal line. It's like, where else was that supposed to go? And for
Right.
the referee to say that, honestly, is not even in the NFL playbook.
Yeah, I've never heard of such a thing. And actually, Brad, our friend down in Kentucky, ends up mentioning in the chat, sports betting in the NFL. And I gotta say, ever since gambling was allowed for the NFL, oh my God. Like, the referees and the level of officiating has gone to next to stupid in terms of what we're seeing in a lot of cases. And it's something now, if the NFL is classifying itself as sports entertainment and not as an actual sports league, now we have WWE shit happening.
Yeah, but here's the difference between the National Football League and the World Wrestling Entertainment industry. The WWE, if you talk to any person who is a diehard fan of wrestling, granted, I don't watch wrestling.
Yeah,
and
I used to, and I still follow it a little bit here and there, but not nearly as much as I used to, but every single match was always predetermined.
Exactly. But here's my key. if you're a fan of the WWE, which I know a lot of people, great guys and all that, guys and girls, I know
Yeah.
both sides who watch wrestling. But my point here is that anybody who with common sense knows that is a fan of the WWE knows that the matches are rigged and it's for one or two purposes, either to contain a storyline that fits their narrative or to bring in entertainment dollar. There's a difference between the WWE and the NFL. The NFL is becoming a soap opera, and which is fucking bullshit because it's a sport. You have 31 other teams, including the Eagles, who I should really say 30 in this case. There are 30 other teams who want to get a chance to go to the Super Bowl or
Yeah.
to make the playoffs in that case, but they can't because the league is suckling in on Kansas City. But the point I'm trying to make is that at least with WWE fans, they at least acknowledge that it's rigged. They know that because it's for entertainment purposes, they enjoy it, but they acknowledge it. They're not stupid. They
Right.
know that this stuff is rigged.
Yeah.
Compare that to like the NFL, you can easily manipulate a game and say, oh, you know, there's a 15-yard penalty on here for a ghost penalty or some shit like that.
Yeah, the
think it's done
15-yard roughing the passer penalty against the Houston Texans, which nobody even touched fucking Mahomes.
Yeah, exactly. And the same thing happened with the Bills. They did not touch Mahomes because they knew the consequences.
Right, exactly.
That should not happen. That should not be happening in the National Football League. It's a sports industry, not entertainment. If you want to see entertainment, go watch reality TV. Go watch fucking Jersey Shore. I guarantee you,
Yeah,
you can
go watch a
actually
Bachelorette or something stupid.
Yeah, seriously. If you want to watch real people cry, go watch those shows. Don't put it in football. Because here's the thing that really pisses me off about this topic is my wife comes up to me the day after the game, and she said to me and this is very interesting, is after Super Bowl 56, which was Bengals and Rams, the one year we did not get the Chiefs, thank God, after that Super Bowl, I found out that, according to Brittany, she said to me, was Roger Goodell made a behind the back door deal with multiple gambling industries like sports, DraftKings, MGM Sports.
Yeah, probably FanDuel's another one.
FanDuel, yeah, that's another one. Prize Picks, Underdog, any company that revolves around betting and Vegas gambling odds. Anybody who does parlays, anybody who does any sort of betting in any sport, particularly football, the UFC, etc., all the big ones in the United States. Some states it's illegal to gamble, but people get it. But the point is that Roger Goodell made a multi-year deal with these companies to say, we need your help to rig games for the next few years to get Kansas City to be a three-peater.
And everyone wonders why that fans in the NFL want Goodell gone. And it's not just for that. There's a lot of shit Goodell's done that we don't like.
Yeah, this is, again, going back to my 7 deadly sins comment, greed, pride, and envy. I could even put lust in here because if you think of lust, it's supposed to be a representation of love. But
Right.
lust could also be a bad thing because Roger Goodell lusts for power. He lusts for money. He lusts for entertainment. This is not football anymore. This is a fucking soap opera. It's become a reality TV show. The WWE standards. Because even though the WWE is fake and it's all acting, we get it.
Yeah,
At least they throw
everyone
their bodies
knows
around.
it's fake.
Yeah, that's the problem. And they know that it's rigged because they know it's for storyline purposes.
Right.
That's why you don't really hear them bitch about the rings. I think if you don't know any better, then maybe you might get mad at it. But at this point, again, there's a difference between entertainment, which is wrestling, compared to a sport in football. The only sport that I can think of on the top of my head that I wouldn't consider rigged is hockey. It's impossible.
Right. Yeah, there's really no way you can. But look at the NBA. There have been cases where referees have been banned and actually suspended for gambling
Yeah, I
and
remember
predetermined outcomes.
What was the name of that referee? Maybe you can help me out on this because I don't follow basketball. But who was the name of that referee that ejected Tim Duncan from a playoff game against the Lakers? I think it was in 04 or something like that. And he was ejected for laughing. You remember that?
Yeah, Tim Donaghy.
Tim Donaghy, that's his name.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, and he actually he ended up resigning from the league in 2007 after the FBI was investigating him that he bet on the outcomes of games.
Yeah, I wonder why. And you know
Mhm.
what, too? I'm
And
remotely
and on top of it, he served 11 months in jail for it.
And you know what? I'm convinced that not only are the referees involved in this whole situation with the betting on games,
Mhm.
I also think Goodell is involved because I think that's why they're so keen on Kansas City. Because the difference between the New England Patriots and the Kansas City Chiefs is people at least respected the Patriots, even though they knew about the Spygate and Deflategate and all that stuff.
Right.
The Patriots were a feared team. Nobody wanted to play them in the past. If you look at the New England Patriots, at least there was parity within those two Super Bowl eras, with them winning the 3 Super Bowls in that 10-year span. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like early 2000, you had teams like the Buccaneers, the Steelers, you had the Colts who won a Super Bowl, the Giants won a Super Bowl, the Saints,
Yeah.
the Packers. You had other teams, the Seahawks, just to name a few. Teams that were new or have been in droughts of not winning the Super Bowl, at least those teams
Mhm.
got an opportunity to win championships.
Yeah.
And the Patriots, they did the same thing and they came back and, won more Super Bowls and all that. But if you look at that standpoint from that perspective, again, you had teams like Denver who won Super Bowls. You had teams like the Rams who won Super Bowls. You had teams like the Eagles of all teams that won Super Bowls.
Mhm.
You understand where I'm going with this?
Yeah, exactly. And then even thinking about it a little bit further, with the NBA and how Tim Donaghy ended up going to prison for gambling, the NBA took it a step further and basically Jonte Porter, who was playing with the Toronto Raptors, he was banned for life for gambling on himself and on the team. And here's the other part about that. So Jonte Porter was found in an investigation. He disclosed confidential information to sports gambling houses, and he also bet on games. So, confidential information. What the hell did he disclose to get himself banned for life?
I don't know. I think what I never understood is, and I'm pretty sure this is the thing in the NFL, is players are not allowed to bet on games, and if you do, Calvin Ridley,
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
get
he got
caught-
suspended longer than Deshaun Watson for his sexual issues
Assault.
that he had. Yeah, the assault.
Yeah. So see what I'm going with is, like, Calvin Ridley of all people was a multi-millionaire or millionaire actually for playing football for God knows how long. But then if you look at like people like you and me who they know can't get into the league because they never played or they
Hmm.
never got a chance or whatever.
Right.
People like that, there's a very small minimum of like 600 people, maybe 1,200 people who get a chance to play in the National Football League. But yet, a good portion of them are not allowed to bet on games because they make more than double than the average person's salary. So, in a way, I don't understand why the NFL is so infatuated with just Kansas City.
Yeah,
Because
me either.
it's like, why was it not like this with the Patriots?
Exactly. And actually, Brad has a couple more comments. He said, the NFL needs to have full-time officials and referees with them being held accountable. Too many misses or blown calls, you're gone. Ban them from gambling as well as immediate family. Good point. And yeah, in the NFLPA, the union, we investigated ourselves. We found nothing wrong. It's like, fuck you, union. And then on
You know what
top of it, he also thinks that they should show their fiscal records as well, which that's a good thing because if they were to show that and they can prove that gambling happened, you're done.
Well, how about this? How about the FBI, or even in this case, have the White House or the Department of Justice look into this bullshit? Because I think it's so inappropriate that for a professional league like the National Football League to have this much conversation about games being rigged in this favor. This is a serious goddamn problem. Until Goodell either fixes this shit or
Until he decides to retire, when
which
Lord
he's
knows when
not.
that's going to happen because he won't do it on his own.
No, Roger Goodell either has to be fired by the players' unit or he has to step down as owner. I truly don't know.
Or
But
he'll
it's
die
that-
in office naturally just because of old age.
He is way too young to be at that point.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. Let me see. How old is Roger Goodell? That's what I'm going to find out now for you, y'all. Because this is ridiculous with how he's handling it. Because I think, if I remember correctly, Roger Goodell has been the commissioner of the NFL for almost 20 years. Ever since,
Yeah,
what's his face?
Tagliabue.
Yeah, Paul Tagliabue retired. So, let me see. Yeah, he became the commissioner in 06. So He's 65 years old, Roger Goodell. So that means if he's been the commissioner of the National Football League for nearly 20 years, he took the job in his 40s, mid 40s.
Yeah. Yeah, realistically, he could still be in the job for another 20 years.
He could, but does it really matter?
Right.
The point is that this guy is so corrupt that he's willing to force people to get vaccines, which was against their will. He was also willing to bet games for other people in other companies to make him money within his own pocket, which is beyond fucked up. And he's willing to screw over history with other teams, like the Bills, for example. The Texans were the next one in line. Why is it that teams like Buffalo and Houston built these teams from the ground to try to beat Kansas City? You're not just beating the Kansas City Chiefs. You had to beat the refs and you have to beat Taylor Swift, because those three guys, those three aspects of the team are very unlikable. The Patriots didn't need a Taylor Swift when they won those Super Bowls. They
Right.
just had Bill Belichick. You had Tom Brady. That was your moneymaker. But the thing is, Goodell hated Tom Brady. That was a big thing.
Right. Exactly. And then Brad also mentions, not to mention the Kansas City Super Bowl game is set to make just under double the amount that the Bills Super Bowl would have been.
Right.
It's
But
all
you know-
about money.
Yeah, and you know what, too? Some people think I'm bluffing, but I am dead serious when I say this. I am not watching the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, I know a lot of people aren't either. I could care less about it at this point. All I know is I want Philly to win just so we don't have to listen to a three-peat, and basically we don't have to listen to it for about the next 900 some years and also in the afterlife.
Well, I will say is that if Philly were to win the Super Bowl, I would feel better about the AFC Championship game, but I am not counting on it. I'm sorry. I'm just
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
It's totally bullshit with basically what's going on right now in the National Football League. It is so corrupt. Like, there needs to be a change of leadership. There needs to be a change in overlook of everybody, including the players, because there are players who act like shit when they say, "Oh, play defense." They leave it wide open. Oh, because it was not in the script. It's not the narrative. And now, because of all this rigged bullshit that's going on now, the Bills now have no choice but to listen to the media for the next 9 months about how the Bills are a choke artist. Josh Allen's a choke artist. Oh, the Bills will never win the Super Bowl with Josh Allen. That is not fair.
Right.
Because anybody who watched that game knew that the Bills were winning, and people act like the Bills did that to themselves.
Right, and it really was the refs in so many cases. Are there plays that the Bills should have had back? Yes.
Yes.
Especially early on, first half. We should have run the ball a lot more than we did. At least we made the adjustment in the second half, and it was totally burning Kansas City's defense. But we should have started out that way sooner. And I think from there, we could have gone further and run up the score a little bit. But also, the other thing that I think has to happen, and I would say Bobby Babich has got to be on the hot seat at this point, because he did not have an answer for Steve Spagnuolo's defenses, especially the blitz packages he was putting out. And half of the stuff that he put out there is what I would call an exotic blitz, especially towards that last play of the game. It's like, where the fuck have I ever seen a defensive setup similar to that blitz package before? It's not often, if ever.
It's absolutely asinine.
Right. I mean, I would have to say, if anybody should be on the hot seat first, it should be Babich. Now, I will say Joe Brady, he got off to a slow start, but he was able to counter the Kansas City defense by way of the run game. So I give him credit for that. And I am also glad that he is going to be here next year, because he pulled himself out of that shit show that's going to happen in New Orleans with the fact that they're over $70 million in cap hell this coming season. So, of course, nobody wants to take that job. But I do like what he did with the offense as a whole this year, where he made use of the run game. And James Cook had his best season. He
Well, I'll say
absolutely
this.
utilized him.
I will say the Bills need to pay James Cook, and I am confident that they will pay him.
Yeah, absolutely. They have to give him the money. We have a pretty good running core now, finally, after all this time. And we can actually use them, which is even better.
Yeah. You know what's even crazier is I read a thing the other day from Spotrac.com. They said that if the Bills were to cut Von Miller by June 1st, I believe, the Bills could save themselves $23.8 million just by releasing him. But the self-proclaimed king of the Super Bowl who hasn't done jack shit since the divisional round.
Mhm.
Diggs that he's going to be back next year. Bitch, the last person who made a claim was going to be back next year, I believe it was Clint Hurdle when he was the manager for the Pirates a few years ago.
Right.
He said he was going to be back, and the next day,
Yeah, he was cut.
gone.
Yeah, he was cut. And the thing is, if you cut Von Miller and you cut his $23.5 million that he would be due, just think about it. We have all that dead money finally coming off, and you add another $23.5 million. You're in a good position to to sign some high-profile free agents
Well,
that
if
could
you look-
actually do some good things for this team.
Well, I will be the first one to say this, and I have a bold claim. I believe because there's this sense around the room, and everybody in Orchard Park knows, or Western New York, or anybody in America knows, that anybody who saw that game on Sunday knew the Bills are a very good team. They beat
are.
all expectations. Everyone said they were going to miss the playoffs. Everyone said that Dolphins and Jets were going to be better. Everyone said that the team was not good enough. They weren't talented enough. Yada, yada, yada. We've heard it all.
Right.
They go to the conference championship game. They beat the Ravens. They beat the Broncos. And they got fucked over in the AFC championship game by the Chiefs. So what do you do from here? Very simple. I have a bold prediction. I think the Bills are going to cut Von Miller because he's 35. He can't do it anymore. And with the cap that's coming off from the dead cap from Stephon Diggs,
Yeah.
including the Von Miller money that's coming in, even
Mhm.
if they trade him, fine, whatever. I predict the Bills are going to trade for Max Crosby.
That would be an upgrade. Big upgrade. And think about it in this way. You can re-sign Amari Cooper. So that's going to be something that we can add as an additional weapon. We can further get some safeties. We can build up on the defense. We could be a very scary team to play next season.
Oh, yeah. And guess what? too?
And then we have the draft.
Yeah, exactly. And guess what, too? Think of it like this. If the Bills were to actually do what I'm saying, is get Crosby via trade or Myles Garrett, because I have heard that name come up, I would rather have Crosby because he has a much cheaper contract than Myles Garrett. And Myles Garrett is also 30 years old.
Right.
Max Crosby is 27.
Yeah.
So is
And
cap
very
hit-
very similar production between the two players.
Yeah, and think of it like this. You get 3 elite years until he's 30 of Max Crosby just by making a trade with the Raiders. And I have no problem with the Bills going after Max Crosby.
Yeah.
Or any elite pass rusher, I should say. Any elite pass rusher in the National Football League. Von Miller cannot do it anymore. He tore his ACL the first year. He missed the first 4 games last season due to that, whatever the flying fuck that was.
Yeah, that
That's-
personal conduct policy or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and he was non-existent in the playoffs the year prior because he kept talking and running his big fucking mouth by basically saying, "Oh, we'll get over the hump." Vaughn, just shut up. You're gonna end up just shut the fuck up. You're gonna end up at Canton one day, guy. Okay. Congratulations. You won 2 goddamn Super Bowls. That's great. We're happy for you. But you have done nothing but run your big fucking mouth since you've gotten here. All right? The Bills will probably cut you or trade you. I don't know what they do. You bring in Crosby. You bring in a quote-unquote closer who will actually doesn't run his mouth and he'll actually get the job done. Not 35-year-old Von Miller who tore his ACL 2 years ago.
Right. And look at his production. It tailed off. It was
That's the point.
non-existent.
That's the point. And plus, if you look at the draft history with Brandon Beane, like, yeah, you have Ed Oliver, you have Greg Russo. Those are great guys, but they were non-existent in the playoffs.
Right. And when you think about it, Ed Oliver, I mean, it was a down year for him. He didn't show up a lot this year. And
That's
then
the problem.
And that's a problem, especially after he got paid. So he has got to get back to that form that he was at the year before. And Greg Russo, I mean, he wasn't existent in this game this past week, but overall for the season, he had a good season.
He did, but if you look into consideration, all these guys that the Bills have been paying for in the last few years are supposed to be guys that got earned just based on their performance in the playoffs. You don't pay guys for the regular season stats. That's what the Bills are doing right now with Von
Right.
Miller. They're paying him based off of his career and based on his production in the playoffs. And again, Von Miller is 35. He can't do it anymore. You need to get rid of him. And I like Von Miller.
Yeah,
but the
I do
problem
too.
is, but he talks so much out of his ass that nobody's going to take his word for it. He acts too cocky, and he says, "I believe in this team" and all that. Yeah, you know who else says, "I believe in this team"? 90% of the fucking team itself. They know that they're so close, but they need younger blood. That's the issue.
Right.
There's too many guys that are on the team that are getting too old.
Right, 100%. Christian Benford being out didn't help. So
Yeah.
there's one issue right there. And Cole Bishop, what the hell was he doing all week, all game?
Well,
Besides getting torched.
to be fair, he didn't get a lot of rep time this year, so I can't blame him too much, and he was a rookie. But I do agree, if DeMar Hamlin's big head didn't hit Christian Benford, who just came out of concussion protocol, you could blame DeMar Hamlin, who's now just a backup. Like, yeah, it was a nice story when he came back from, nearly dying on the field.
Right.
It's like he's met death, and he came back, and he was given more time. It's a nice story, but that dude now needs to just fuck off. All right, that guy was that whole feel good banana thing with DeMar Hamlin coming back from the dead and all that jazz. We're very happy with the successful story, but that was a one-time incident. And what has he done since then?
Not much.
My point exactly. DeMar Hamlin is nothing more than fan service. And yes, you can call me out all you want. I don't give a fuck. DeMar Hamlin does not deserve to be on the Bills next season.
Or if he were to stay, he's got to be in a backup role. He cannot be the starter.
That's the big thing. The Bills, and you know what too? I wouldn't be shocked either, and I'm just saying this in advance, just my thought process. I wouldn't be shocked if the Bills talked to DJ Reed from the Jets to bring him here.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to come here because, knowing all the issues going on with the New York Jets, yes, they have their head coach and now they have a new GM, but you still
And a new
always...
defensive coordinator.
Yeah, but then you still have to deal with Woody.
Oh, God.
So that's the problem number one. But if you can bring him here, DJ Reed, he would want to go to a contender very easily. Just do a trade. Ship him Hamlin for Reed. I don't think they would go for it, but
I have you know what's one I heard that was very interesting, and this might come out as a surprise to you.
What's that?
Have you heard the recent Tyreek Hill rumors lately?
Well, I know he wants out of Miami from everything, and he wants to go to a contender.
Well, I will tell you this, and this might come out as surprising. The Bills have interest.
Okay, so here's the thing. How much do you want to bet that Tyreek Hill absolutely hated it in Miami to the point where he was playing like ass in Miami just to try and get out of there, and then all of a sudden he goes to the Bills and does a 180 and ends up being like he was in Kansas City?
Well, okay, there's two problems. Number one, Tyreek is going to be 32 this year, so that's old for a wide receiver.
Right.
Number two, if you're going to get at least 1 year of production, what's it called? If you're going to get production from Tyreek Hill, you have a very small window to do that because I think at some point he's going to eventually retire because there has been talk that he might go back to Kansas City, but I think the feud is too rifty for him in his career and his ego is too big because I think he went to Miami to prove that it wasn't Patrick Mahomes to win all those Super Bowls, but rather it was him. It's kind of like in a way with...
And it backfired.
Yeah, in a way, it's kind of like Jerry Jones firing Jimmy Johnson to kind of prove that it was all Jerry Jones and not Jimmy Johnson for the last 35 years or whatever the number was. It feels like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And then he finally had to actually acknowledge the fact that it was Jimmy Johnson and put him on the Ring of Honor.
Oh, yeah, big time.
And Jerry Jones didn't want to do that, but he had to finally face reality.
Yeah, so here's a proposal I found. So the Bills would get Tyreek Hill in a trade, and the Dolphins would get a 2025 fourth-round pick, a 2026 third-round pick, and Kyer Elam to the Miami Dolphins.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with it. Ship him out.
Well, the Dolphins, I think, would say no on that because they probably saw the playoff game and they said, who the hell wants Kyer Elam? Because I think Kyer has potential to be a very good corner, but McDermott does not use him because he doesn't fit the system. Right. And let's be honest with ourselves here. Kyer Elam has been on the team now for, 3 years?
Yeah, and look at what happened in year number 1. He got benched because he was playing like ass.
In year number 2, he hardly got to play because the Bills had Christian Bedford, who I believe was an unsigned rookie who just happened to be a number 1 corner on the Bills.
Exactly. And he outperformed Kyer Elam every single time.
Yeah, and then year 3, they hardly use him. And the only reason why Kyer Elam is even there in the first place is because Bedford got another concussion because of DeMar Hamlin's big head, who could be told to fuck off now, go to the Steelers, and sign a 5-year deal, fuck that team over, and say, I'm home, I'm going back to Pitt.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we saw how that worked for Kenny Pickett. Oh, wait, Kenny Pickett's actually playing in a Super Bowl roster.
Yeah, big time.
Oh, God. I
All I'm saying
wonder
is-
how Rob Hazu would like DeMar Hamlin on the Steelers.
That's a good question. I don't think he minds to be fair, the Bills did let Levi Wallace go all those years ago, who
Right.
I believe now is on the Ravens. Could you imagine that?
Right. And then look at Tre'Davious White being on the Ravens after he ended up having a couple stops with the Rams and then having to go elsewhere.
I wouldn't be against the idea of bringing him back for cheap.
Yeah, I wouldn't be either. I mean, he'd actually be an upgrade at that position, quite honestly.
Probably. But the point being is that there's a lot of chatter about Tyreek, but I don't see it happening, but I do think that the Bills are going to trade for a receiver. I've heard names like Cooper Kupp. I've heard Cortland Sutton, T. Higgins. I've also heard DK Metcalf being brought up, who, by the way, recently said he would not accept the trade to go to the Patriots.
Right. Well, obviously no one wants to go to the Patriots at this point. So that's a major rebuilding project in itself.
I mean, it's asinine. Again, I just think that's ridiculous that this idea is even being thrown around. I don't think the Bills got Tyreek Hill because I think he gets at least $72 million. And his agent came out and said, oh, he's very happy in Miami. Even though, like, in the last game of the regular season, he was caught on the mic saying, yeah, I don't want to be here.
Right, exactly. And nobody respects Mike McDaniels. That's another thing.
That dude's such a dork. It's like to me, Mike McDaniel is the equivalent of Napoleon Dynamite if he was a sequel character.
Yeah. I mean, he's a definition of ayahuasca retreat. He's on a constant ayahuasca retreat.
Oh, big time. This is why nobody takes the Dolphins seriously.
Yeah.
Because the Dolphins are always at the back end of the AFC East. And the Dolphins haven't won a fucking playoff game in 25 years. Stephen Ross is way out of his head. And they bring in the wrong people and they either are too old or they just want to retire. Tyreek
Right.
specifically is from Florida. So it made perfect sense at that time to trade Tyreek to Miami. And he wanted to get out of there because he was like, oh, I feel disrespected by Patrick Mahomes. I was a side chick.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, to Patrick Mahomes' wife and father for calling out Bills Mafia, yeah, go screw yourselves.
Oh my God. Patrick Sr.'s comments really enraged me. He said, it's a good day to not be from Buffalo.
Yeah.
That did not sit well with a lot of people.
No. And then, of course, we all know Swift has to be out there, and I will give Haley Steinfeld a lot of credit. She said right off the bat, this playoffs is not about me.
It never was. And here's
Exactly.
the difference. The thing is, Haley Steinfeld's a very private person. And
Yeah.
she doesn't go on the spotlight. She doesn't need the attention. She makes
Exactly.
enough money by making, Spider-Man movies. She doesn't need the attention like Taylor Swift does. Because you're talking about a grade B actress in the Marvel Universe versus Taylor Swift, who is the biggest pop star in the
Yeah,
world.
making like billions of dollars.
Yeah, why the fuck did the NFL indulge themselves with her? I never
I don't
understood
know.
that.
I don't know. But credit to Haley Steinfeld, though, because she does not want to have the attention on her. And
No,
that's a
and I
good
don't-
thing. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate her too. My wife and I like Haley Steinfeld. She's like, I like Haley Steinfeld. I think she's a very sweet woman. She's very supportive of Josh,
Yeah.
which is great. And the two of them are getting married eventually. So at that point, she's going to be the queen of Buffalo.
Yes, she will. She will. And, and good for her for staying out of the limelight on that, too. Because, I mean, she wants it to be about Josh Allen and the Bills.
Yeah, and that's why I don't hate her for that purpose. I always liked her as an actress. And I think she was also Hawkeye in the MCU. But the point is that She doesn't run her mouth like Taylor Swift. She doesn't cause drama. She doesn't do any of that stupid shit.
Right, exactly. So good for her on that. But I was gonna say, holy shit, we've already gone almost an hour just on the Bills rant. But let's talk about a couple other things in the NFL. I mean, obviously there have been some coaching changes. Liam Cohen is now the coach of Jacksonville. Brian Schottenheimer is getting his shot with Jera down in Dallas, and of course we talked about it. The New Orleans Saints can't find anybody because they wanted Joe Brady so bad, and he decided to withdraw because he knew it was going to be cap hell and couldn't build a team.
Well, here's a better one. There's nobody to attract him.
Exactly.
Like, seriously, if you're an NFL coach and in this cycle you say, what are my options with the Saints? Derek Carr? Nah, not really.
Nah.
Alvin Kamara? Great running back, but he's getting old.
Yeah, and he gets hurt a lot.
Chris Olave might get traded.
Right.
So, outside of that, though, Ryan Ramczyk retired. So, realistically, what does New Orleans have?
Yeah, nothing.
I mean, they are kind enough to host the Superdome. Or the Super Bowl, I should say.
Right. Again, which is nice.
But, oh God. I guarantee you this. I have heard recently that the Saints are looking at Kellen Moore, who's the Eagles' offensive coordinator.
Oh, Jesus.
If they don't get Kellen Moore, this offseason by Mickey Loomis is a fucking failure. I am telling you right now.
It is.
Because he should be fired if they don't get it.
Yeah.
It's like the job is so bad, dude, that guys like Mike McCarthy, his fat ass, Captain Diabetes himself, would not take the Saints job.
Right. Look at Matt Eberfluss. He decided to take the defensive coordinator position.
For the Cowboys.
Yeah, of all places.
Oh my God. Like, dude, Jesus Christ.
Right.
Like, there's nothing in New Orleans.
Right. And even Steve Wilkes, who could have been a head coaching candidate, he even turned it down and decided to take a coordinator position.
With the fucking Jets.
Yeah, what does that tell you? The New Orleans job sucks.
It's not attractive. The only difference with the whole situation to make it attractive is Bourbon Street. Other than that, there's nothing there.
Right. Exactly. I mean, what else do they do if that job gets turned down again? What do you do? Go after Antonio Pierce, who just got fired after 1 year with the Raiders? I mean,
no,
I think, and I don't even think that would be a possibility.
Well, I think if things don't go the way that they hope, I think of one of two things. Either they're going to hire one of the assistant coaches that Dennis Allen had on his staff because the job is so bad. And I think if they don't do that, they're probably going to hire Kellen Moore. If they don't hire Kellen Moore, they're probably going to look at Mike Kafka, who's the offensive coordinator for the Giants.
Oh, man, that's bad.
What a bad job that is.
Right. And then what are you doing? Giving like a 2-3 year deal max or something? It's like, it's bad.
Jesus Christ. You know it's bad too when Pete Carroll gets a coaching job at his age over anybody that works for the New Orleans Saints. And when was the last time the Saints were relevant? When they had Drew Brees?
Yeah, exactly. That's the last time.
And the last big name coach was Sean Payton. Because if you look at the Saints in general, they don't have a very good history.
Right.
At all.
Right. And look what Peyton did with Denver. His second year coaching that team, and he got him in the playoffs.
Yeah, they got massacred by the Bills, but
he still got him to the playoffs with Bo Nix.
Quite frankly, and Denver's got a very bright future.
They do. And the thing about it, because they had Peyton for a long time, and yeah, they had the scandal and all that stuff, but at the same time, that was the biggest mistake for New Orleans, was letting him go.
I don't even know who's going to want that job. And the thing is, if you're so desperate for a head coach in this cycle, like the Saints, and you don't have one after all the good ones are off the board, you're fucked.
Yeah, exactly.
You are fucked.
You're going to probably have like a 2-15 season or something crazy.
I don't even know how Mickey Loomis still has a job after all this. Like, sure, the Saints won the Super Bowl 15 years ago when, they had guys like Marcus Colston, Drew Brees, Reggie Bush, guys like that.
Right.
And the Saints were very ballsy. They had a very good offense, but the defense was the main prize. But if you look at that within that time span with Drew Brees, in their own little depressing world, Drew Brees is the best quarterback that team has ever had.
Exactly. And they have never found one since.
I mean, right now they have Evan Kamara, but that's about it. But even that dude might get traded.
I was gonna say they've never found the QB replacement for Drew Brees. They never have. But then Kamara, he's getting to a point, and he's been injury prone in the past too. So it's like, how many seasons do you have left before you have to say goodbye to Kamara?
Well, I have a better question. Does he turn into Saquon Barkley and go to a Super Bowl contender?
It's
Just think of it
interesting
like this.
thought.
Think of it like this. What if, and this is just hypothetical, what if Alvin Kamara goes to a team that's up and coming, let's say Denver,
Yeah.
right? Go to Denver, be reunited with Sean Payton. Their offensive line is actually pretty solid if you look at the Broncos.
And they're built. They can run the ball, and they've got passing, which is even better.
Yeah, and think of it like this. Javonte Williams is a free agent. So there's a
Right.
very good chance that he might go someplace else. And Alvin Kamara might get traded to Denver, in which it would benefit him.
Is he'll get the ball. There's no question about it.
That's what I mean.
And he'd probably be very effective too. So think about it. Saquon Barkley decides to go to the Eagles instead of stay with the Giants. Look at the season he had. It was like he was like a rebirth of his NFL career.
Yeah, he's literally living up to the hype when he came out of Penn State. He's a generational talent. It's crazy how the Giants ruined him nearly. Goes to the Eagles. 9 months later, he's in the freaking Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. And he had one game where he popped off for over 200 yards rushing, which is unheard of.
Yeah, which is a big time thing.
Yeah, and over 2,000 yards this season. So good job, Giants. You wrecked him. But the Eagles have basically brought him back to life.
Quite frankly.
Yeah, but anyways, yeah. Let's go into hockey because I don't want to get even more pissed off about football. But
good idea.
but for you guys joining us, of course, welcome to what we're going to be starting the second hour of the show. So, of course, if you haven't seen some of our previous episodes, they are up on Spotify. Of course, you can check us out on YouTube, and then basically from there, you know, we've got everything on there. But let's talk about some things in the NHL, and this is going to be one thing that a lot of people are going to love. Bettman is finally going to retire. After all of these years of watering down the sport and watering down the league and hating Canada, he is going to finally be gone in 2 years.
Oh, yeah, definitely big time. And you know what, too? It's not all doom and gloom because Gary Bettman, as much as of a cunt bucket and a dick cock that he is, I don't care for him. But I will say there were some very good things that he did, but there's a lot of bad in that situation. So to me, he's what I like to call silver lining, a silver lining president, meaning that in any situation in business, politics, sports, any company that you work for, silver lining businessing is basically somebody who does both good and bad, but it benefits how their entire legacy revolves around. In this case, I would say he's a silver lining commissioner. And if you look at what he's done to grow the game, I think he's done a decent job with it. But the growth of the sport is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger by the year. And it's getting almost to a point where the NHL is almost making $1 billion. And that is something that's never been heard of before. If you told me that 30 years ago, I would have said, that's not even possible.
That's true. And there are some absolute crap things he's done. I mean, there are some good things. I mean, you look at the Winter Classic, except for this past year when he decided to put on New Year's Eve instead of the traditional New Year's Day, which was absolutely stupid in terms of positioning it. I mean, the Winter Classic, yes, it's a nice game that he brought in that attracts a lot of fans. So you're growing the sport by having it in different markets. Now, on the flip side, a winter game in Florida? I mean, come on.
2 of them.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you look at it, Arizona Coyotes, that's probably one of the biggest screw-ups that he ever had. But then when you look at some of the other teams that he's had through expansion, I mean, Seattle's a great one. Vegas has outperformed everybody's expectations.
Vegas did very, very well.
They did extremely well, and they're still doing extremely well. And
they're a Stanley Cup contender every year.
Yeah, except for like 1 year. out of their existence, and they've been in the league for less than 10 years now, which is hard to believe that they've already been in the league almost that long. But I mean, they have a Stanley Cup. They went to the Stanley Cup Finals in their first year. I mean, that team consistently has overperformed, and I don't know how they do it, but they are stacked top to bottom. And you look at their forwards, you look at their decor, they are stacked, and that is a powerhouse out in the West. I mean, and that's like one of the teams that everybody wants to be, and they do a great job entertaining their fans also with a lot of their in-game entertainment that they have, in addition to what you see on the ice. They make it exciting to go see a game, and honestly, and the funny thing is, I've been to Vegas multiple times. I had family that lived there for a long time, and I've been to Vegas, I want to say 3 times now, and it's been a while since I have, but I would totally go and see a Vegas Golden Knights game. I would totally go to it.
I would totally. And you know what? Taking this in consideration, I would almost put this at a conversation in 2026 for Road to 32. We don't even know what that conversation is going to look like yet. But taking into consideration, the Raiders are on that schedule, and I believe the Broncos are on as well. 2026 is going to be very, very tough to do. But let's get to 2025 first before we get to that.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
What I'm saying?
But I would say if the Bills were to play the Raiders in Vegas, and there's the opportunity to see a Vegas Golden Knights game, I'd be on board. I'd be flying out there, and I'd have no problem doing it.
Well, we did that already for Seattle. We saw the Kraken play.
Yeah, and we got 2 hockey games in as part of it, which was awesome too.
Yeah, so, two hockey games and a football game.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not bad for me.
Yeah, and finally got to see an actual hockey game in Canada.
Yeah, how do you feel?
Well, it's good. Now I can finally say, like, Vancouver was on my bucket list for cities I wanted to go to, and now I can say I've been there and really liked it. So, would I go back to Vancouver? Absolutely, I would.
Oh, I'm actually supposed to go back in May on a cruise.
Right, I know.
It's like, it would be like, at that point, it'd be like, I've already been here.
Right. But I will say, Vancouver, great fans. Seattle, great fans. I mean, great arena, too. I absolutely, Climate Pledge is definitely in my top 3 of arenas I've been to.
Yeah, I think so too. But as far as expansion, I think Bettman has done a fair enough job to certain markets. Like, there were some hit and misses, like Atlanta, for example, which for some reason he's obsessed with that market.
Right.
He wants to bring them back again before he retires, which I think will likely happen during the next CBA negotiation, which is whenever they get that fixed up. And then he also wants to bring Houston into the National Hockey League, which is fine. I have no issue with that.
Yeah.
But if you look at the markets, well, within the last, I want to say 25 years, maybe 30 at minimum. If you look at teams like Anaheim, Tampa Bay, San Jose, Florida, Nashville, Raleigh for the Hurricanes, and then you had Arizona, which was not a success at all for obvious reasons. But then you also look at markets like Winnipeg, which was via relocation. We knew that already. Mm-hmm. But if you look at Minnesota, he brought back brought back hockey into the state of Minnesota after losing the North Stars to to Dallas. He brought that back.
Yeah. And now looking at Utah, they're having a highly successful first year in Salt Lake City after the Arizona Coyotes relocated. And the thing is, if they would have done that sooner and looked at Salt Lake as an option, or even one of the other markets I had thought about was Portland, potentially, where you have Seattle, Portland, LA, and Vegas. That would have been a very nice rivalry out in the West. But the nice part about it, Salt Lake, they've embraced that team right out of the gate. And they're not playing all that bad either. But they finally have fan support that Arizona didn't give them. And then in some of the sites I'm seeing, we should bring the Arizona Coyotes back. No, you had them for almost 30 years, and look what happened.
Right. And the crazy thing, too, is that he's expanded the game with these outdoor games. He's expanded the market with all these non-traditional markets. And to be fair, they've been fairly, successful.
A lot of them have worked out.
Yeah, Vegas was a non-existent market for years, never had a pro team. Then the NHL becomes the first one.
Yeah.
And then look at them.
And it's probably one of the most successful.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm at the point now, even though they're an expansion team, I'm at the point now where I think Vegas has sort of become a stapled organization. Meaning, if you look at teams like Toronto, like the original 6, Toronto, Chicago, Montreal, the New York Rangers, as you know, I just
Boston.
saw them. Boston, Chicago, teams that were in the original 6. I feel like Vegas is in that new term for that market. They're never going to leave the NHL. They're too successful. They make too much money at this point.
Hmm.
And even if they were to ever one day in 20, 30 years get a new stadium, there's plenty of room in that city to get that kind of
Yeah.
market.
Or if there wasn't, they'll just blow up a hotel and they'll just put an arena on site like they do with everything else there. So,
Bingo.
yeah.
So, and again, I think that it's also come down to where he's putting some teams. I know there's been talk of Hartford, but I don't think that's going to happen at this point. This market's too small. But if you look at like Raleigh, North Carolina with the Hurricanes, that's a non-traditional market. And the Hurricanes, as of now, are Stanley Cup contenders. And
Right.
don't worry, we're going to get to the Hurricanes later. But as far as that market, it was a non-traditional market when they first got there. And then in 2002, they go to the Stanley Cup Finals, exceeded people's expectations. 4 years later, they win the Stanley Cup, which is
Mhm.
crazy to think because that Stanley Cup team is almost 20 years old,
Right.
which is nuts. And then in the same process, you look at teams like Florida and Tampa, two non-traditional markets, 4 Stanley Cups in 20 years. That's pretty freaking good
Yeah.
for a state that's a non-traditional market.
Right. And I would say Tampa has outperformed the Florida Panthers in terms of like overall attendance, but look at the Florida Panthers as of late. They have actually now finally, I think for the first time in a long time, become a consistently good hockey team. And they're getting that fan support back. They're finally getting more of that consistency, which is good. But they've also been drafting well, and they've also been developing players well, and they've also
And they
been
trade well.
and they do trade well, and that's a big plus. And you've been to that arena down in Miami, and you've seen what that place is like, or actually out just outside of Miami. But I mean, you've seen it, and even you had mentioned you thought there were a lot of good things with it.
Yeah, I did. When I went to Emirates Bank Arena last March to see the Panthers, and to think that episode's a year old at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah, when I went to that Florida Panthers game last spring, I saw a decent market that had respect for them for the most recent of fans. But my big thing is a lot of them were bandwagon fans, either from the area, never gave two shits, or they were from another area or another state. Like if you say like, "Oh, I'm from North Carolina," or "Oh, I'm from New York," I'm not really from Florida. Like if you were born in Florida and you're a Florida Panthers fan
hmm,
before they won the Stanley Cup, then that's different. But if you're just a fan based off of the recent two runs they had and they
Right.
won a Stanley Cup, that's a completely different story.
Yeah.
But I do think though that if people are loyal to the team, even when at some point, which they're not going to be terrible for a while, they're going to be very, very good.
Hmm.
But they're going to be a seller in the NHL. And I have no issue with them doing this because the Panthers, though, they're a very good team on paper and they will crumble. But as of right now, they have a very young core, which is strong enough to be competitive. And damn it, look at them. They won a Stanley Cup already.
Right. Very true. And then when you look at other teams that have come back into the league, I mean, Minnesota being one, they've been consistently, for the most part, a competitive team. When you look at Winnipeg, they had some very good successes early on, and they do have a good team. Their attendance is down, and they've been having issues with pricing with their tickets and everything. But on the whole, they have a good core fan group that they work with. And plus, the other thing is, a lot of people need to realize that Winnipeg has the smallest arena in the league. I mean, they seat maybe 14,000 at the most. But then when you only have about 350, 400,000 people that live in Winnipeg. I mean, it's probably the smallest market out of small market teams, but they have their core fans that love that team. And then
They do.
yeah, and then when you look at other teams that have been out there, I mean, Colorado when the Nordiques originally relocated there,
Oh.
that was huge.
No, dude. Did you see what's been going on with the Ottawa Senators?
Well, I know they're looking at building that new arena.
Well, no, buddy. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the recent picture that went viral with Spartacat. You see it?
No, I didn't see that.
Do you want context of
Sure.
this? So we're gonna wrap this topic up, and then I'll get to what I'm gonna say. So I think the bottom line though is that Gary Bettman's legacy will be 50-50, but I think it will be more bad than it was good. There were some good things, but a lot of it was bad because 3 lockouts in 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, you had 3 work stoppages, which is not acceptable at all because you were too greedy. And the new one's coming up in, I think, 2025, 26.
I want
or
to say
whatever
it's
it was.
coming up within the next year or so.
Yeah, so they need to figure something out. But I think that I'm pretty confident that they will figure something out. It's not like the last time where they were bitching about their contracts and saying, oh, somebody's getting paid and things like that. I think the big thing that's going to be talked about in the new CBA is LTIR pay cuts. So, like, for example, Vegas takes an advantage of it. Tampa took an advantage of it. So I think that that's going to be discussed, and I think that's going to hold accountability, but I think it also holds up to everybody else. It's not just those two teams.
Yeah, and do one favor, let's get fighting back in the game a little bit more.
Well, I did go to the Islander game on Saturday against Carolina. First period, you had a freaking fight between, what's his fucking face? Not Matt Martin. It was, Scott Mayfield versus Seth Jarvis, I believe it was.
Okay.
And the two of them were just knocking it out on each other. It was
Nice.
great.
Yeah. And plus, of course, last night, if you saw the Boston game, Nikita Zadorov, former Sabre, ended up getting game misconduct. So,
Yeah, I saw that. But
yeah.
But no, so the thing I wanted to talk about real quick regarding the Ottawa Senators was there was a thing that went viral as of late, and the announcement was that the Ottawa Senators, for context, are going to be playing half of their training camp and a half a portion of their preseason games in Quebec City, along with the Canadians and the Devils.
Ooh, all right.
That's why I'm talking about this. And the reason I bring up Spartacat, their mascot, is because you can look it up for yourself. Is there's a picture of him putting his arms out like a barricade. One side of the jersey is the Ottawa Senators, the home one, and the other half is a Quebec Nordiques jersey.
Oh, please, for the love of God, bring back the Quebec Nordiques so we can have the
So-
Battle of Quebec again.
So Michael Andler, the owner of the Senators, after Eugene Melnick died and all that,
Yeah.
speculation has been growing since that picture and since that announcement, because the Senators are having training camp in Quebec City and because they're playing a handful of preseason games in Quebec City. There's speculation that the NHL is deeply considering moving or relocating the Ottawa Senators to Quebec City to bring back the Nordiques because of the process is being too slow in terms of a deal for the LeBreton Flats.
That has been going on for a while with the LeBreton Flats, and there have been instances where I've seen probably 1,000,001 renderings of what that new arena would look like, and they just, for some reason, Ottawa can't get it going. So here you go, Quebec. It's not too far from Ottawa. You're still in the same division. You're still in the same time zone, and
Different
you have
province.
and Ottawa is right on the Quebec border, so literally you're just jump away from where you're at now. So basically with that, Quebec City, they've shown they will support hockey. They will absolutely support hockey. And they have an NHL ready building for it. And they sell out for junior hockey where they're putting in over 18,000 people a night.
Well, here's where my argument flies. Michael Andlauer, the owner of the Senators, came out with a comment because someone asked him, why is the process taking so long to get a deal for the LeBreton Flats? And is there any speculation of the Senators being relocated to Quebec City at some point in the future? And he basically said, no, I don't believe there is. I just want the deal done for the LeBreton Flats. And the process by the city council and the process of getting the land and all that jazz is taking up too much time. Granted, I don't know dick about that information as far as how long it's going to take, but I do believe that in the future, not this year, but down the road, if the Ottawa Senators cannot come to an agreement on a new deal for the LeBreton Flats, because they desperately need a new stadium, because the Canadian Tire Center is a pile of garbage.
Yeah.
And
It's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's kind of like Arrowhead in Kansas City. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing to look at that's beautiful. And on top of all that, it's usually cold. And the Senators are competitive, and they're just right there to make the playoffs, but it's not a guarantee. But the point is that they love the team in Ottawa. There's no question about that. But the issue is, it's not about the fans. This is never in fault of the fans. It's the ownership. Because Eugene Melnick, when he was alive, would used to threaten relocating the Senators to someplace in the United States. And he would say, they would look very nice somewhere else and kiss his ass. But Michael Andlauer, he's been the owner now for over a year. And this guy is, from what it sounds like, he's having a really hard time figuring out if he whether or not could get the land for the LeBreton Flats, because he's claiming that the process of getting the land and getting the approval for the deal is taking too slow.
Yeah.
And it's speculating because of that picture I was talking about of Spartacat with the half Northeast, half Senators jersey. People in Ottawa are visibly upset about this because they firmly believe that the team could end up relocating to Quebec City.
Yeah, and even Sportsnet is reporting now that it could still be years before they get that land. And here's the thing: there's basically one of the biggest arguments that's taking place right now is they have what is known as the NCC out there, and the NCC basically is like, well, if we let apartment high rises go on that land, we're going to maximize our land value, and we can get way more for it. But if we put an arena on that site, we're not going to get as much as we want. And basically, what happens is there's an issue of highest and best use, and there's an issue of fair market value, and that's where a lot of that disconnect is coming into place right now. So basically, what happens, because NCC has been bitching about the whole land transfer, they've been sitting on it for twice as long as the Senators have been even in the league.
Yeah, and the thing too is that this whole thing is so tricky because Ottawa is a very small market, and at least in the Canadian standpoint, it's not a big market. Yes, Ottawa is the capital of Canada. There is no denying that.
Yeah, not
But
a huge population area though.
It's really not. And to have a team like the Senators in that market is very challenging. Even their expansion year, they were horrible. And at that point in time, like, yes, they had some very good teams in that time frame, but you have to remember something too, is they've had some pretty rough years with Eugene Melnyk in the helm. And it's getting so bad that they're even talking about relocating the team. And because you just said, because of all these deals that are applying in place, I don't know how much longer this is going to hold up. But a lot of people were having a severe anxiety attack in Ottawa just from that one picture, because that sparked a lot of speculation.
Yeah, and apparently now with what Sportsnet is actually even saying, it could be a minimum of 5 years before any deal could be done.
Oh, God. And when does the lease for the Canadian Tire Center end?
Soon. That's the problem. So they might be forced out, and they don't want to keep sinking money into the Canadian Tire Center because the Canadian Tire Center opened the same, I believe it was the same year that the KeyBank Center opened. It was like 1996, like around that time. But the problem was when they built it, it was in Canada, Ontario. It was supposed to be built up, and it never was. So then it's so far out of the city, it's like Arrowhead. It's like outside of Kansas City. But then with the NCC sitting on that land for over 30 plus years because they want a specific value that they consider fair market, and they're going back and forth on fair market between what the hockey team would bring versus what private development would bring. It's like you almost have no choice at this point.
You really don't. And because you said that it may take 5 years for them to get the rights to the land for the LeBlanc,
that's what they're hoping is 5 years. But right now they don't know.
Well, they better hurry up because they might not have much longer before they have no choice to actually leave. Because the Canadian Tire Center is one of the worst stadiums in the NHL.
Yeah, exactly. And basically, I mean, one of the things that they're even suggesting, I mean, we could just do like short-term leases at the Canadian Tire Center until there's a new arena built, but how long are you going to do it? And that's the problem. So right now, one of the other things they're looking at is with the potential of a new federal government in Ontario coming this year. Apparently, what's also coming to mind is that the LeBreton Flats is a minimum $1.5 billion that they're going to be looking for that arena.
And you know what? That sweet piece of land in the LeBreton Flats, it feels like to me, because I've gone through it, it reminds me of the Elmont Park situation from 2017. It was a bidding war between the Islanders and the New York City Football Club. And the land was for whoever got the land would stay in their position. The New York Islanders obviously won this land because if they didn't win the land, thank God they were able to keep the team. But if they did not get that building, the Islanders would probably be sitting in Kansas City. I sat through history. I was there for that. And I was like so nervous about that whole ordeal that I was not confident they were staying. And then a deal struck, and the New York City Football Club ended up currently now playing Yankee Stadium. So again, relocations happen because it's a business standpoint. Look at the Coyotes. This past April, they had no choice but to move because, well, they can't play in a 5,000 seat college hockey arena. They can't do that. So you have to move the team to Utah
Right.
because there's
Exactly.
a market there. The same thing is happening with the Senators. If you cannot sustain a market in a big country like Canada, and I understand that Canada is a much smaller profited country than the United States, there's a serious problem in that market, and I know the Canadian dollar is going to be an answer. It's going to be running the show, which at that point in time, the Senators might be in Quebec City at that point.
Right. And if that were to happen, if the Quebec Nordiques were to come back, I guarantee you they will sell out every
Big time.
single freaking game known to mankind.
Oh yeah, I would totally drive
Yeah.
up to Quebec.
And they have a ready arena, which is even better. So the nice part about it, they get the support. Their junior teams get the support. They love hockey up there, and they would kill to have a hockey team back. So
They would. But-
if it were to happen, I guarantee you they will have a huge following.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. Do you remember a few years ago when the NHL had preseason games in Utah, and that was before the Coyotes moved? You remember that shit?
Yeah, and they were selling out.
Yeah, they sold out. And guess what? I think that was like the Canucks and the Kings or something like that.
Yeah.
I remember the preseason game being played in Utah because at that time there was speculation about expansion to Utah. I think this is a foreshadow what's coming up in August or September. Yeah, mostly September. What I think is happening in September is a foreshadow of the Ottawa Senators' future. If you're having to have the Senators play two teams and training camp in Quebec City, this is a doomer situation. Even though they can claim they're not relocating, this is foreshadowing their future.
They probably will be if they don't get the ability to build on the land. And here's the other problem. The Senators actually bought part of that land at the LeBreton Flats, but yet they're still not being allowed to go through with development. So there's a lot of infighting still, and that's another issue that they're having to work through. So if you buy a piece of land and you can't build on it and you can't do the things you want to do for development because one entity has so much power over it, and they're like, oh well, we're just going to sit on it for all this time. It's like you almost have no choice but to move.
Yeah, I'm at the point where it's ridiculous, honestly. But
Yeah.
but I think at this point, Bettman is going to retire. The Senators could likely move in a few years. We'll see what happens. How about that Mikko Rantanen trade that happened over the week?
That was interesting to hear about because, I mean, there were some thoughts that there would be some deal coming up, but no, Rantanen's finally gone.
Yeah. Oh shit, we forgot to talk about Utah with the hockey club, but we'll talk about that in the end.
Yeah.
But what was I gonna say? No, that Mikko Rantanen trade was so out of left field, but there's actually a lot more information that came out about that trade than people realize.
Yeah, let's recap it.
All right, so for those of you folks at home that don't really understand the context of the trade, we're going to talk about it now. So as of Friday last week, around like 9 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night, whatever, minding your own business, drinking beer, enjoying yourself on a Friday night, right? So in the middle of all this, there was speculation that Mikko Rantanen wanted a new contract with the Avalanche. The only problem is the Avalanche were not willing to give it to him because he said, I want to be paid more than Nathan McKinnon. And $14 million is a lot. He wants to make as much money as Leon Draisaitl, which I don't think he outright deserves it. He's a good player. I'm not taking it away
Right.
from
I
him.
don't think he's at $14 million, though.
No, that's why this is a big story. So Mikko Rantanen says, I wanted $14 million. And next thing you know, he doesn't get jack shit. And the contract talks between him and the Avalanche were not going very well. And it's almost February. And the trade was made on Friday last week. So, what is it, January 24th when that trade was made?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the trade is this. And by the way, I was at his first game as a Hurricane, completely out of nowhere. So, Mikko Rantanen was traded as part of a 3-team trade. The Carolina Hurricanes acquired Mikko Rantanen and Taylor Hall, and they have also acquired the rights to prospect Nils Juntrop John Torp from the Chicago Blackhawks, and the Blackhawks are retaining 50% of Rantanen's salary for the remainder of the year. And as part of the deal, the Colorado Avalanche are acquiring defenseman Mark Nietzsche and Jack Drury, along with a 2025 second-round pick and a 2026 fourth-round pick. Both of those picks are from the Hurricanes.
Okay, so Rantanen's gonna get the opportunity in Carolina. He's joining a good team over there. Colorado, of course, is a good team as well, but he's gonna have the opportunity to get paid.
Oh yeah, big time. But the question is, do you really believe, in your perspective, do you really believe Carolina is going to pay him $14 million?
No.
I don't think so either, because it's like, if you're making this big of a trade in the last 20 years, why is it that if you're making a big deal like this, why take the risk of trading half your core for one guy who's not guaranteed to stay with you?
Right, and he's already making 9.5 as it is. So it's
Yeah.
like if you're jacking it up to 14, I mean, that's a huge cap issue that you have to take a look at. I could see potentially getting them closer to 10 or 11, but I can't justify 14.
Yeah, I would probably give him around 10 and a half. That's just my opinion, because there is no fucking way that guy deserves to be $14 million. The only four people in the NHL that make $14 million right now are Connor McDavid.
McJesus, yeah.
Yeah, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Nathan McKinnon, and Austin Matthews.
Right.
Those are the four guys that are in their own class get that kind of money.
Right. Even Ovechkin doesn't make that much. What does that tell you?
Yeah, and Ovi's 40 years old. He doesn't need that money anymore.
Right.
He's going to retire soon.
Yeah,
But-
and he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. We already know that.
Oh, yeah, big time. But I just think it's funny, too, when you think of this trade. Colorado, yes, you get Martin Nietzsche. You get Jack Drury, who I believe is the second cousin for Chris Drury, or it might even be his son. I'm not exactly sure. But you get another Drury on the Avalanche. But then you also get two picks, a second and a fourth, but in 2 separate years. So, in my opinion, I feel like even though the Avalanche might be worse off, they got some good value for him.
They did. And actually, to answer your question, Chris Drury is Jack Drury's uncle.
Okay, that explains it. So, your uncle is the general manager of the New York Rangers, while your nephew is on the Avalanche now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I just find it funny that a guy is so greedy that he's willing to leave a Stanley Cup contender. And there actually was a process about how this trade broke down. And before I do go into that guide, Mikko Rantanen actually made a comment about the situation. He said he was, quote, completely off guard by the trade to the Hurricanes, and he was, quote, very upset, according to Andy Strickland. And he said, quote, Colorado showed very little to no interest in attempting to resign him over the last several months, and it was a panic move by Colorado.
I wouldn't sign him for 14 either.
No, and guess what? You already have a $14 million player on your roster. His name is Nathan McKinnon.
Right. Who is justified in getting it.
Which, in its own right, it just... This whole trade, it's all about the money for Rantanen. Very good player, but he's not worth $14 million.
Right.
I am terribly sorry.
He is not a goal scorer like Matthews. He's not a difference maker like you have in McKinnon, who basically is your franchise.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What if Rantanen decides to suck monkey balls without Nathan McKinnon, and yet he gets paid all that money?
Well, then the team's fucking stupid for paying him that much money, so...
Oh, speaking of teams that are stupid enough to pay him that money, if it's not Carolina in free agency, I've heard that if he becomes a free agent in the summer, Mikko Rantanen on July 1st will sign a $14 million deal for 8 years with the Edmonton Oilers.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah. Just dig your teeth more in cap hell.
Yeah,
Please
they're already in bad shape as it is.
Yeah, so this is how the trade came in, step by step. So it was 3 separate trades. So we're going to go through all of them. There were 3 parts. The first one was the Avalanche traded Mikko Rantanen. Originally, they traded him to the Blackhawks for the signing rights to Nils Juntorp. Okay, that was the prospect that went to Carolina.
Right.
Trade number 2. The Blackhawks then traded Mikko Rantanen to the Hurricanes for a 2025 third-round pick. That's when the retaining salary came in by 50%. So Chicago was going to eat that salary. And then trade number 3 came up. Was the Hurricanes then traded Martin Nietzsche and Jack Drury and the 2 picks. And they also gave up the rights for Nils Juntorp.
Yeah, so there you go. Three team trade.
I mean, it's wild as hell to think, but I mean,
Right.
it is a business, but again, it's all about the money for Rantanen.
Yeah, it is. It is. And then speaking about people that are getting paid, how about Will Borgen and Logan Thompson making some payroll?
Oh yeah, Will Borgen got what 5 years for $14.1 million for
Yeah.
the New York Rangers.
Crazy.
I don't even think he was that good.
No,
on the
he
Sabres.
wasn't. He sucked ass on the Sabres for the most part.
What did the Rangers see in him that deserves that kind of money?
I don't know, but if I'm Chris Drury and he doesn't perform, he might be kissing his GM job goodbye.
He's already been doing that. Think about it.
Yeah.
You trade Capo Caco. You trade Jacob Trouba because he didn't agree with you. Chris Drury is digging his own grave in this
Exactly.
situation.
And he's doing it in one of the biggest markets in the sports world.
Big doubt. Without a doubt about that. I
Yeah.
mean, oh my God. I cannot believe that this is an actual conversation we're having about the Rangers. You are spending recklessly. And
Right.
normally they don't.
Right. So they're digging their own grave. But the Canucks might be making some deals coming soon, and it might be with the Sabres because there is talk about the Canucks possibly retooling a little bit. And one of those players, Elias Pettersson, may be interested in being with the Sabres for some pieces coming back.
Okay. So, my opinion about this is very interesting. I like Elias Pettersson. I do. But I would gladly take him. He has no jurisdiction or any restrictions in his contract that says, no, he does not want to go to Buffalo. He has a no movement clause, but he can't do anything about it. You know what I mean? So the Sabres could basically work out a deal with Vancouver all they want. And it's getting to the point now where the Canucks are outright a dysfunctional shit show. I mean, are we surprised?
No, we're not. And when you look at it, and some of the things that they wanted in the trade, okay, Dylan Cousins, okay, I'm fine with giving him up for Elias Pettersson. There's no question about that. And then when they're looking at the defenseman and whether you go with Bowen Byram or whether you go with Owen Power, right now, if I had to choose between the two, I'm giving up Power in the deal.
Yeah, I don't know why Adam signed him to that massive extension to begin with. Oh, but he's a strong piece to this core moving forward.
He hasn't done shit compared to Bowen Byram this year.
At least with Rasmus Dahlin, he at least deserved that contract.
Right. And when you look at Byram, when he was brought in, he actually outperforms Dahlin at certain nights.
Yeah, basically.
And is your number one defenseman. It's
Right.
like you have Dahlin as 1A and you have Byram as 1B. And Power hasn't done much as of yet in terms of overall development.
Yeah, and guess what? I would not be against the idea of trading Power. I was not even the biggest Owen Power fan when he
No,
got
me
drafted.
either. I mean, yeah, it was nice to get him, and I know that defensemen take some time to develop, but I think he's behind where he really should be at this point.
Right. So they paid him based off of a sophomore slump. Like in his rookie year, he reminds me in a way of Tyler Myers. If you remember Tyler Myers, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you do.
Great rookie year, sucked ass his second year, and then it was kind of middle of the road.
Yeah, and then what did they do later? They traded him to the Jets with Evander Kane. I know all about that deal. But as far as that, I feel like that's the path that Owen Power is taking. Now, granted, he's not a turnover machine like Myers was. He's just not that big. He doesn't have the tenacity to be a power line mate with Dahlin.
Right.
I would much rather keep Bowen Byram in the situation because at least with Byram, he was actually good when he was with the Avalanche.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he's terrible. He's a good defenseman. But
Yeah.
I would much rather have him around than Power. And that's just my opinion.
Yeah, same here. And I would totally package Power and Cousins, ship them out for Pettersson, and then there you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, and he's not, and this is not the only thing that might happen in Vancouver, because apparently Quinn Hughes has been making some noise as well. He said that he has no intention or does not want to be a part of any real rebuild in Vancouver, according to a Globe and Mail article. And GM Jim Rutherford in this situation said, quote, "If we were going to completely start over, that means that Quinn Hughes goes, and we'd like to figure out a way that he's here forever. Then secondly, and it sounds like too, the Vancouver Canucks are determined, mind you, they are determined to get players back in a deal in any sort of deal for either Elias Pettersson or JT Miller.
Right.
And then, as they have no interest in acquiring picks and are starting over almost solely due to Hughes. So let me get this straight. You want to trade JT Miller or Elias Pettersson, which I think Pettersson has a better chance of being traded than JT Miller.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to rebuild, but you need to rebuild.
Right.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Simple. Bite the bullet, rebuild now, so you get it over with, and then you're set.
Okay. I saw a video a few years ago from Urine83 about the Vancouver Canucks, about how they're one of the cheapest teams in hockey, and Francisco Aquilini, one of the owners of the Canucks, outright basically said he wants to be competitive without giving up draft picks, but they're one of the most, quote, stubborn franchises in the NHL. They're beyond frustrating to the point where they're not bad enough to get a top draft pick, and they're not good enough to be competitive to make the playoffs. All it is just a bunch of wannabe veterans who have no impact or depth whatsoever. Because, I mean, come on. Ryan Miller was on the friggin' Canucks when this happened, and Jim Benning was the GM. What's the difference between then and now? It doesn't matter if... It doesn't even matter if Jim Rutherford's the GM, or I should say Patrick Alvin is the GM, but Jim Rutherford is the president of hockey operations for the Canucks. He is running that team to the ground, and he is just too stubborn to acknowledge that. He's like Jerry Jones. He doesn't want to admit that all of his past success was based on people around him, but yet he wants to just build the team upon himself. Like, that is not a good success key to have. And if you want to piss off Quinn Hughes by not getting draft picks, but you want to keep him around, but you don't want to rebuild, but you have almost no choice but to rebuild, what the fuck does that imply?
Yeah, exactly. And look at what Rutherford did to the Pittsburgh Penguins, how he ran them into the ground. So
yeah, or the Hurricanes after they won the Stanley Cup in 06.
Exactly. So I would say if we were to be given the opportunity and we needed to get rid of Cousins and we needed to get rid of Owen Power to get Pettersson, by all means do it. And I would say do it quickly and make sure it is done. Because that will go a long way in terms of building the talent that we need for this club. It has to happen. And then in terms of rebuilds, the Chicago Blackhawks, they can actually spend some big money this year, and I don't even care that we're over 90 minutes. We're having some fun talking about this. So
I'm having fun with this, by the way. Just letting you know now.
Yeah, we had to do our first hour of venting about the Bills. So
yeah, we were too butthurt about that. Well, not butthurt, but we were pissed off legitimately about that. But about the Blackhawks. So you were just talking about how they should spend. There was actually two names being brought up. One is Mikko Rantanen, which is no surprise at all.
Right.
Because Chicago could really use a linemate to play with Bedard.
Yeah.
And Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner is an interesting one. Mitch Marner, if I'm not mistaken, is a free agent at the end of the year.
I think he is. And Toronto has cap issues.
Toronto has major cap issues. And John Tavares, I think, is on the last year of his deal also. So $11 million off the book for Tavares. $11 million soon to be off of Mitch Marner unless you bring him back. The Toronto Maple Leafs can't sign depth goaltenders. They can't bring in defensemen. They can't do jack shit. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Maple Leafs go for it all in at the trade deadline.
Right. Or, here's a little thought, I'm just throwing this out there. What if Kevin Adams were to grow a set of balls and actually try to go after Tavares?
No. Fuck John Tavares. I do not want that bastard on that team. You hear me? I've run through his shit on Long Island, okay? I don't want to fucking see him here.
Oh, man. I had to bring
that
up.
Guy.
I had to bring that up. But
fuck John Tavares.
Oh, man. But, you know, let's take the last, 15, 20 minutes or so. Let's get into baseball because spring training is almost here. And
yes.
And we are almost at that stage. We may have a Road to 32 coming up this summer where I may do the Subway Series, so that is to be determined. But one of the big things right now, since we're talking about the Mets, Pete Alonso, will he stay or will he go? Because he is also linked to the Blue Jays.
You know, it's funny. I actually read some things about Pete Alonso. And one of the things came out today from Andy Martino. He said on SNY that the Mets' final offer to Pete Alonso was for 3 years, or I should say over 3 years, for $70 million, in which the Pharrells will be, quote, tough for him to beat with the Blue Jays. And the Jays recently signed Anthony Santana from the Orioles for 5 years at $92.5 million with a present value of around $68 million. And he has an opt-out in 2 years. So Santana was coming off of a career year, whereas Pete was not quite at the same level. So I think from that perspective, I do think Pete Alonso is worth bringing back, but it also depends how much you ask for. Because I think it's down to the Mets or the Blue Jays. If the Blue Jays get Pete Alonso, if they get Pete Alonso, that outright confirms to me that the Mets are trying to trade for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. We talked about this.
Right, which he would be a great addition.
He would be. But I also should mention that, remember how, I think it was 2 months ago, we talked about this with the San Diego Padres about how they were keep pretty much saying everybody was available for trade.
Yeah, and when you look at it, I mean, and they didn't single anybody out. Fernando Tatis Jr. was actually one of the players that could possibly realistically go up for trade. And when you look at their other core that they have, I mean, they didn't limit it to anybody.
Well, I was going to say, as of that recent conversation, is the Mets have been calling, or I should be in this context saying, knocking on the door with the Padres for both Dylan Cease and Michael King.
Now, that would be a good move. If the Mets can land them, that really boosts them forward.
If I had to pick one over the other, I am most certainly focusing my eyes on King, of all people.
Yeah, great player.
Here's the thing. Michael King is a damn good pitcher. And he was in that Juan Soto trade all those years ago, and he was a nice prospect for the Yankees. The point is that he has enough veteranosity in Major League Baseball right now to kind of tell everybody like what to do, what things like that, how to prepare for games. He's a damn good pitcher, and I know he's in his 30s. I get it.
But they need bullpen help, and especially if you can use him as a closer, there you go.
I would. Yeah, I'd be open to that. And I know that recently the Dodgers went all in. We talked about it. I know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Fuck me.
Yeah, the luxury tax.
Oh yeah, that literally pissed me off. And then I think at this point the Mets are trying everything in their power to make sure that they at least get some sort of pitching, because Michael King's a damn good pitcher, and so is Dylan Cease. Both of them are really good. But I think King has a better chance of coming here than Cease, but we'll see.
Right. Yeah, but if they can get some help on it, by all means. I mean, they do need to bulk up their pitching roster a little bit. But if they can fill those holes, there you go. I mean, it's going to be a big help. And then otherwise, the Mets really don't have a whole ton of holes that they have to really worry about at this point. I mean, getting Juan Soto was the biggest hole that you could think of that they needed to fill, and they took care of it.
They did. And also, remember, he was the biggest free agent fish of all time at that point.
Yeah.
I also have read the Mets are also considering trading for 25-year-old former first overall pick from the Detroit Tigers, Spencer Torkelson.
Okay, so again, another good player that potentially, it fills additional holes that the Mets would have. It actually gives them a lot of depth. But here's one thing, and I'll throw this out there, and then Rob Hazy is going to hate me for this with what I'm about to say. How about at the end of the rookie deal, Paul Skeens?
Fuck no. They will not trade him. I guarantee you that. But
the Pirates are cheap. You gotta remember that.
Oh yeah, but
they got rid of McCutchen in his prime, so
true. But I think for Spencer Torkelson, he's a first baseman. He's only 25, Tom. So, and the Tigers, you have to think about it. The Tigers are trying to go all in now. But the big thing is that they signed Gleyber Torres from second baseman. You know what I mean? Like Gleyber Torres comes in from the Yankees, and then they plan to move Colt Keith to first base. So Torkelson has little to no room on the team. So if the Mets are serious about making this deal, do it.
Yeah, by all means. And it'll give them playing time. And plus, on the flip side, you have additional first base depth.
Exactly.
Which is always needed, especially if you make a deep run again, which I think they have the capability to do that. So it's just a huge thing. But that would be hilarious if the Mets were to offer the farm to Paul Skeens and they get him after his rookie deal. And Pittsburgh would be, again, the franchise of mediocrity.
Ugh, do you pick on Pittsburgh all the time?
I had an apartment there for a short time. I have to. But the Pirates were always irrelevant during that time.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, their ownership is just so cheap, and now it's like, hey, you actually have Paul Skeens. You actually brought back McCutcheon for a second year, although he's past his prime, but he's still very serviceable. But then the question is, do they bring back Aroldis Chapman this coming summer?
Woohoo! You're mediocre.
Yeah, exactly. The Cuban Missile who can still throw over 100 miles an hour, and he's like up there.
Yeah, quite frankly. But
Yeah,
spring training is
I
gonna be
think
fun.
I think he threw it like 106 at one point last season.
Yeah, some 11-year-old kid 2 weeks ago found his rookie card, and it was like one of one in the world. And the Pirates tried to do something what the Yankees did a few years ago
Yeah.
with Zach Hampel
Yeah.
catching his 1,300th hit or 3,000 hit baseball. They tried to do something eerily similar with this 11-year-old boy. I don't know if he accepted, but
No,
they
he
were throwing,
didn't.
like, see, he did it. Good.
No,
Keep the
he
card.
didn't. Yeah. Well, it's gonna be auctioned off where he can make a hell of a lot more money now.
Oh yeah, dude, that's smart. Honestly,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, the Pirates are offering him 30 years of season tickets, and you figure at $20 a seat, it's still not going to be worth what the card is worth.
no, dude. That's the only card in the world. So
Yeah.
I honestly, I would not, under any circumstance, sell that card to any big corporate company. I know Zach Hampel was offered that with the Yankees, but he got a plea deal with that. But this kid is actually 11 years old, and he's actually smart.
Yeah.
That's actually good business dealing. But as far as that goes, that's really clever,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. And even with the auction house, what they would keep, he's still going to make more money than what the Pirates would have given him,
Absolutely, without a doubt.
even after the auction house cut. So you figure even if the auction house takes like 5 to whatever percent or whatever, he's still making bank.
Big time.
So good job to the kid.
Yeah, again, that's a very smart move on their end.
Absolutely. And yes, I do have my Bills mug. So have it all alive and well.
Yeah, at least everybody's doing okay mentally.
Yeah, exactly. Although after that loss, they did say, "Oh, if you need help, you can call these numbers." They were doing like a public service announcement on the news and different things with it. But
They probably should. If you're going mental, like if you're going mental after 4 consecutive losses in the last 5 years against the Chiefs,
yeah,
then I would probably take the phone line and say, "Help me! I need help. I
Right.
feel like I'm going mental."
yeah, I hear you. And then of course, round it out, the Mets might be getting some new road jerseys this season.
Yeah, I saw it. It's a blue alternate, and it's blue with an orange collar. I talked about it last week, and it says New York in script. It goes back to like the '80s with Daryl Strawberry. It's a blue road jersey. The numbers are blue with orange outline. It's just like, oh god, I hate it.
It looks like ass.
I would not ever buy that jersey.
Right.
But there is one more topic I want to talk about real quick, and
Yeah.
it actually was announced tonight. Was the Utah Hockey Club is down to 3 names for their new NHL
Yeah,
name.
and Yeti is not one of them because Yeti is like, kiss our ass. You're not getting any licensing rights.
Yeah, basically. So the final 3 contestants for the Utah Hockey Club name are, and by the way, I should say this real quick, is the voting system is going to be in person like an election. So like a U.S. presidential election, you
Oh.
go in person and vote. And that's
Yep.
the way it should be. But anyways, so the 3 votes are the Utah Hockey Club, the Utah Mammoth, and the Utah Wasatch.
And a lot of people don't like any of the 3 names. I will tell you that from like some of the reactions. But out of those 3, I would say go with the Utah Mammoth.
Yeah. And furthermore, what the fuck is a Wasatch?
I think it's like a name of a mountain range.
Yeah, it's something that people have been asking. What the fuck is a Wasatch? And the definition for the Wasatch is Wasatch is a mountain range in Utah that spans within 160 miles from Idaho to Utah. And in the language of the native Ute people, Wasatch means mountain pass or low pass over the high range.
Yeah. So I would say between the names, seriously, go with the Mammoth. It'll fit the club well. And it was funny, I was reading one of the comments earlier, and someone said, Arizona Coyotes. Guess what? The Arizona Coyotes are dead.
Yeah, no. But I should also mention that Utah Hockey Club and the Utah Mammoth were there from the very beginning. But the Wasatch name was a new option that was created to honor the idea of a mythical snow creature with a Utah-centric approach inspired the Wasatch Mountain Range. So, in other words, if you were to name the team the Wasatch, which I'm not a fan of personally, for a hockey team, I would not name that. But if my guess is correct, they would probably have to name it with the logo of the Sasquatch or Bigfoot
Right.
in this case. I really don't like this idea simply just because I think it's too extreme and not many people would fully understand the term of the name, especially if you don't live in Utah.
Exactly. So go with the Mammoth. I mean, it's something I think would fit them well, and certainly, it'll work. So that's what I'm kind of thinking. But
But
we'll see.
if
what
I had
happens.
to, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but we'll see what the voting comes out with. I mean, I would say the Mammoth or the Hockey Club.
Yeah, if it came down to those three, even though I think Utah Yeti would have been awesome,
Yeah.
Yeti told him to fuck off, which is unfortunate. But if I had to pick one or the other, I would probably go with Mammoth, just simply because if you think of the mountain range, if you think of a mammoth, they were a fearless creature during the prehistoric era, during the Ice Age, and them and bisons were the only two animals in that range to go through a snowstorm without fear, and that's what they were notorious for.
Yeah.
So I think the mammoth name makes a lot of sense, but
Yeah.
at the same time, you also have to go into consideration the Colorado Mammoths, the lacrosse team.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem then becomes if the Cronkies, as in Stan Kroenke, Josh Kroenke, the owners of the Avalanche and the Rams, Josh Kroenke runs the Avalanche operations.
Yep.
Stan Kroenke owns the Rams, and he runs their operations. The point being is the Cronkies alone will probably sit down and they'll hear of this idea and they'll say, should we allow that or no? I think if that's the case, chances are, if for some reason that deal gets denied as the name, I think that the NHL is going to get sued just for the idea that there's a Carolina Panthers and there's a Florida Panthers, but there's not a major four team in any of the major four with the name Mammoth. And the NHL would be the first one to have it.
Right.
So, in a way, it's just very obscured with how this voting system works, because how do we really know that people voted on Venom, but it was very widely popular?
Yeah.
Outlaws was another one.
Yeah, that was another one that had come up also, and actually, there's more people that actually sort of like the Utah Outlaws versus the Mammoth. So, but yet it's not in that final round of 3.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. But I think if it came down to it, I'm picking the Mammoth.
Yeah, I would agree, and that's how I would probably lean towards it too. So, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be coming up with it, but it'll be interesting to see how that whole vote works, and at least they're getting the fan involvement with how the vote would work also. So, good to see.
Absolutely, without a question.
Yeah, so I think, hey, we ran almost an extra half hour over, so hey, you guys got almost a 2-hour show from us tonight. So we had to go a little bit of overtime. It's all good. He's going to be gone next week anyway, so we wanted to get your fill in before we do anything. But that being said, were there any other things you want to bring up before you're gone for over a week?
Two things. One, make sure Vinny is on time. He's on, he's actually in on this. Don't just say it. Make sure it's actually a deal. And don't leave me out to dry for that, just because I'm out. You know what I mean?
Right.
For the week. So, one other thing, too, is that Buffalo After Dark, the scheduling is going to come out a little differently in the near future. Towards the end of February, I want to say the 26th, I just signed up for a beer league roller hockey team, and I got called and said that they play on Wednesday nights. So Tom and I, depending on the schedule, whenever I get it, I will let you guys know when I'm going to be available. And I'm hoping it's not during the time of the show, because I think it's only necessary that he gets an impression, I get an impression, and you go from there. So if nothing works out, we might have to change the date of the show.
Right.
Very simple.
Yeah, and worst case, I mean, if we have to move it to later in the week and we go prime time on like a Thursday or Friday or something, then hey, we do. So there's a lot of things we can do with it. But yes, the show is not ending, so I will tell you that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
It's just
that.
No, we're going to be around for a while. But as far as that, Vinny Torcasio will more than likely be taking over for my spot next week. Tom just has to confirm it, and I will be playing roller hockey pretty soon.
Yeah, so good stuff. Good old beer league hockey. And then with that being said, we'll still have some great stuff coming up, and who knows if Vinny's confirmed, he might be sitting on this couch behind me too, because he actually lives right near me. So he was actually one of the very first people in my house other than my mom. So when I ended up moving to the new place, so he actually, these two tables right behind me, he makes them. So of course, if you want them, $150 a pop, go for it, and he'll build one for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to see next week's episode when I get back from my trip.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, good stuff, man. But hey, enjoy your trip. And then in the meantime, we appreciate you guys all joining us as usual. Thanks for comments and all of that. Of course, if you want to check out old episodes, go to Spotify. We have them on there. Of course, you're always welcome to visit it on YouTube as well. We have all of our seasons on there. And hell, if you want to go all the way back to season 1, you'll find them there. So,
Yeah. And one last thing, and I forgot to say this, is Road to 32 edition of the New York Rangers is coming out this week.
There you go. Good stuff. And I will say, originally I was thinking there might be Road to 32 Bandits edition, but when I did look at the video, I had less than 10 minutes total of video. So it doesn't exactly work to put together a whole episode, but it is what it is. But who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe doing another game this season. So if that happens, should be able to get some more footage. But that being said, enjoy your trip. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other, and we will see